Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Reaching Carbon Neutrality by Understanding Future Energy Demand. Today, we will have a look on two scenarios toward net zero and objective delayed, and a specific focus on 5 European countries: France, Germany, Spain, UK, Italy, and Ireland. So welcome to the webinar. I'm Florent Gauthier, Project Manager at Enerdata, and I'm with my colleague Paco.
Yes, sorry, technical problem. So I'm Paco Bailly, and I'm Senior Energy Analyst at Enerdata. Maybe we can wait 1 minute or two before to start.
Okay, let's start. Let's start with the Enerdata presentation. We are global consulting companies with 30 years old, and what we are based in Grenoble in France, but we have a subsidiary in Singapore. And our main jobs are to work on databases and forecasting models. Yeah, today I will present with Paco 30 minutes webinar, and then we can take some questions that you could have. So don't hesitate to use the Q&A box, and we will have a look if we answer it during the presentation or at the end. Today we want to share with you some findings because when we produce Energy Prospective by 2050, we should first have a look on the historical trends, and these last few years have been quite special, let's say. So we will first have a look on what happened in terms of policies in EU, in terms of technology market, and in terms of behavioral changes these last 4 years. And then we will deep dive in two scenarios that we have built and see the different impact between these two scenarios. So we will share some results and comparisons, and have a look after that how to go further. So let's start with the first part, the period 2019-2023. The question is, are we currently witnessing a structural break in energy demand toward net carbon neutrality? And I will first start with what we can call the new energy trilemma, which is something not new, but let's say that it's very quite right now. So the first is the climate and the environment. In 2019, the EU has published the Green Deal that has led to the climate law and the legislative package review, Fit for 55, with the main ideas is to have the ambition of reducing the GHG emission by 55% in 2030 compared to the base year 1990, and reach the carbon neutrality in 2050. So that's the political overview, and Fit for 55 is being discussed, but it has started in 2021. Meanwhile, on the geopolitical, there are some geopolitical events. The first one is the sanitary crisis with the COVID in 2020 that has led to the program of recovery Next Generation EU and the RRF facility, and in just after that, in 2022, EU published the strategical plan Repower EU, to answer to the Ukraine invasion by Russia, and that's written in the plan that we want to terminate with our over-dependence on fossil fuels from Russia as soon as possible, and the latest in 2030. So we are talking about energy security. In 2023, the US published their Inflation Reduction Act, which is a clean tech competitiveness plan, and EU answered with the publishing the Green Deal Industrial Plan and roadmaps like the Net Zero Industry Act. We will see later what it is, but the main target is to produce in EU more than 40% of to have more than 40% of the production capacity by 2030, and the main drivers for energy demand, which is the focus of today's webinar, are heat pumps and batteries for electrical vehicles. I give the floor to Paco for the technology market trends.
Okay, so the first focus that we wanted to do was on the evolution of the boiler market in Europe. So here you have on the left of the slide, you have the evolution of the sale of the gas boiler, and we can see that over the last years, the sale stopped to increase and are even declining in the year 2020. So that's the first point. And in the opposite, sorry, you can see the sale of the heat pumps on the market, and we move from an increase to 15% between 2015 and 2020 to an increase of 30% per year between 2020 and 2022. So that's for us the first signal that something is happening in the building sector. Just this could be accelerate in the future years as there is more and more discussion about the ban of gas boiler or oil boiler in sales in many European countries, Western European countries. But also we see that the first figures of the year 2023, the first half of the year, says that maybe we'll see a slowdown in the sale of heat pump for this year, because the debate were maybe too strong, and some people was fear about the ban of gas and oil boiler for this year. So we will have to wait maybe the year 2024 to see another increase in sale of heat pumps. Okay, so that was about the building. Let's have a focus now on transports. So similarly, we looked at the evolution of the sales of cars by type of engine over between 2012 and 2022. Between 2015 and 2019, we saw a decrease in sales of diesel cars related to the new policies about air pollution. And this has been compensated by an increase in sales of petrol cars that we can see between 2016 and 2019. But the shift was in 2019, between 2019 and 2020, with a new policy on the emission for cars that imposed to the manufacturer to have quite a minimal share of electric car in sales. And so we saw a strong increase of the battery electric car in sale between the year 2019 and 2020. This increase continue to 2022, and if it continue after, we could see a decrease of the petrol car in maybe 2023 or 2024. Last thing that we wanted to emphasize here is the role that could play the plug-in hybrid electric car. It has been seen as a transition technology between petrol and diesel and full electrical car, and we can see here that it's already stagnating. We saw an increase between 2019 and 2021, but we can see that in 2022 we are at the same level as in 2021. So we'll see how it will evolve in the next years. Maybe another last point on transport. That was a focus on cars, of course, but we also saw a shift in the trucks during between 2019 and 2022, where in fact in 2019 a lot of people betting on the development of biodiesel or biofuel in general for trucks, and now we see that many manufacturers and many long-term energy scenario bet more on electrical trucks and fuel cell trucks. Okay, so that was about building and transport. So now we can talk a bit about industry. So in Europe, the main policies, of course, in industry was the ETS policy, the market about emission of CO2. But we saw a new policy coming those last year with the carbon border adjustment mechanism that will limit the imports of goods with a high emission high emission. So that was the first policy, and we are also seeing a new investment from governments to help industry to move from fossil fuel process to electrical process. For example, here we displayed the project of iron to move from a blast furnace process production based on coal to direct reduction iron, which would be based on electricity and hydrogen to produce iron. So if we count all these projects, all the announced projects recently, we can see that it would represent around a third of the current production capacity of Western of the countries that we analyzed in the future years. So that was, of course, about iron, but we can see similar trends about CCS or hydrogen. So really in industry, we are moving from a market-based approach with the ETS to a more investment-based approach pushed by governments. And so we talk a lot about technology, but we want also to emphasize about sufficiency that during this last year had been placed at the heart of the debate. First, because in the deep decarbonization scenarios, as in IPCC or IEA, we see now that there is always behavior changes that are taken into account these scenarios. And also because we saw with the Ukraine war an example of what is sufficiency scenario, sufficiency behavior. In fact, so here on the slide, you can see the evolution of the electricity consumption after the war in Ukraine compared to the average electric consumption between 2014 and 2019. And we can see that in France, yes, and in Germany. And we can see, of course, that there was a decrease of around 10% of this electricity consumption during this year, during this last month. So, of course, it's related to economic aspect, price of electricity, but also maybe to support the war in Ukraine. And we can expect with an increase in awareness about climate change that population could change their behavior in the future, and we can say maybe in future it's more probable that we will have a decrease in energy consumption due to a change in behavior. So, as we said, we have new policies in Europe to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. Electric technologies are spreading faster than we expect before 2019, and also behavioral changes that has been placed at the heart of the debate, and maybe could persist after. So for Enerdata, it was important for us to produce new scenario to take all this aspect into account. So we use all the services of Enerdata. So of course, the database, Odyssey database that we are in charge, and our intelligence services about news or about our country profile to produce a complete historical database, and also to review all the energy demand policies in the country we looked at. We use that to feed our model, Enermed model, which will model the evolution of the final energy demand. And we produce scenarios that we could find in the country energy demand forecast product. So Florent, I think we'll continue to explain how we define our scenarios for our scenarios.
Thank you, Paco. Yes, now we will have a look why. On the energy demand pathways to 2050, we will have a look on why do we have these questions of maintained or delayed objectives. Regarding the Fit for 55 legislative package that will have an impact on the current legislation, I mean about the ETS, as Paco said, the ESR, we have also the EED directive, the EPBD on buildings and on renewables. So all these things are being discussed. Regarding the EED directive, an additional 11.7% reduction of final consumption has been voted, and it's based on the previous baseline by 2030. So this is an additional effort to reach the 55% reduction of GHG, and that's the good things to know are important is that government, it was the results of negotiations between governments asking for a -9%. The Repower EU plan that was suggesting a -13%, with the models that said that the best could be -19%. So all these figures can be moved forward or pushed back depending on, for example, the next election in 2024. So it's important to know that all these things can be moved. Regarding, as I said, regarding the building sector, there is first the behaviors. Not many things are written in the EU legislation about behaviors, but in the Repower EU, there are an estimation of 10 BCM reduction of natural gas, which is a 2.3% of reduction. So it's good to notice, just to have this in mind, what is the ambitions regarding behavioral change. And for buildings, the directive separates the new construction from the renovation. For new construction, all new construction will need to follow level. So the two tools that are being used are the emissions and the energy labels. So the emissions, all the new buildings in 2030 will be must be zero emission by 2030, and the energy label is mandatory. For the existing stock, there are the residential stock and there is the non-residential stock. So here, two other tools are put in place. The minimum energy performance, which means that we take the 2020 amount of energy that is being used by all the non-residential stock, and there are a -15% by 2030 and a -25% by 2034 that are thresholds put on the average consumption of this stock. For the residential, it's based on energy labels. In 2033, the average existing stock must be at least D, and in 2040, all countries have to define their own minimum threshold to be on the pathways to zero emission overall stock in 2050. So all these things, all these deadlines are taken into account in the models and can be pushed back or moved forward. The same for transport, which is perhaps the highest sector for emissions. In this case, the indicators are carbon intensity for car, vans, truck, and ships. And this is the energy mix for the aviation. So here, there is nothing about the amount of person kilometer or passenger kilometer or tons kilometer. The amount is on the carbon intensity in gram of CO2 emitted per kilometer. And in all the the projections, it's decreasing, and with the main ambition and the famous target of 2035 of zero emission per kilometer for all new vehicle sales for both cars and vans. So, and this is discussed very hardly in the European discussion. For the aviation, just notice that it's a mix, an energy mix of sustainable aviation fuel that are the target for the trajectory. As I mentioned previously, in the Net Zero Industry Act, EU want to anticipate the breakthrough in industrial decarbonization technology by having the production capacity of at least 40%, and they anticipate that the production will, the overall production of clean tech will be in 2030 3 times more than today. And the two interesting things are about these two game changers in the energy demand. So for heat pumps deployment, it will be multiplied by 6 in 2050. It is expected to be multiplied by 6, and for the for the batteries, multiplied by 15. So it's an industrial and competitiveness challenge. And I give the floor to Paco to summarize it for the two scenarios.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so based on that, we decided to produce two scenarios. So the first one is a toward net zero scenarios, which is in fact the scenarios that will lead us to reach zero emission for the energy system by 2050. This is based, we included in this scenario, in fact, all the ambitious project announced and law that has been announced. So, for example, we have, of course, the end of fossil cars by 2035, but we will have also major industrial projects that will be achieved on time, and a high efficiency in technology, for example. We also include in this scenario behavior change for the citizen to reduce emissions. In the other scenario, named objectives delayed, we assume that the objective, the current target will be mainly delayed of 5 or to 10 years. So for example, the end of internal combustion engine cars, will be in 2040 instead of 2035. And also, we do not include high efficiency progress or major change in behavior. So that are our two scenarios. It has been defined just to, in fact, to frame a bit what for us could be the evolution of the energy demand based on what we see today. You can. So we will present now a few key results on our scenarios. So just to remind, our scenario is focused on final energy consumption for energy uses. So in 6 countries: France, Germany, Italy, UK, Spain, and Ireland. So that is the evolution of the complete final energy demand for energy use. So we start in 2019 on the left to 2015 on the right for the two scenarios on the right. So first, maybe the key point is we can see that there will be a decrease, and we expect a decrease between 35% and 45% of the final energy consumption in our scenario, according to the scenario. And that's the first point, maybe to emphasize. Just to be a bit clearer here, the light blue part at the upper part of the stack is in fact the ambient heat. So there is debate about how we account ambient heat from heat pumps. So here we decided to account it in our figures. So that's the first point. We see also that we will move from a fossil fuel-based energy system or final consumption system to an electricity-based in energy system. Yeah. That's the second point. And maybe we can also see that there is no major difference. We can think there is no major difference between our objective delayed scenario and our toward net zero scenario when we see the evolution of the energy consumption here. But in fact, when we look at the evolution of the CO2 emission, we can see there is a strong, large difference between if we accumulate all the CO2 emission over the 2022-2050 period, we can see that in the objective delayed scenario, we will be 25% higher than in the toward net zero scenario. As the electrification will be the major shift in the evolution of the energy demand in the Western Europe in the future years, we wanted to emphasize a bit on that. And you can see here the share of the energy consumption, the electricity share of energy consumption for the industry sector, transport sector, and building sector. So here the yellow part includes electricity and electricity needed for produce hydrogen, but only for energy uses. So if we start with industry, we can see that there will be an increase in the electricity consumption as we have more and more technology to produce heat. So first, low heat as it is today available. But also in the future, maybe technology could develop to be mature to produce temperature above 1,000 degree. In the transport sector, we can see that we have almost no electricity consumption today, and it will represent more than 80% in 2050. It is related, as I said, to the electrification of cars and also trucks, as we estimate that the truck sales in 2040 will be 65% electric and 25% fuel cells in 2040 to meet the target of minus 90% of emission set by EU. Finally, in buildings, we can see maybe here that the increase in electricity consumption will be the lowest. It's because first, in buildings, there is already a lot of electricity consumed in this sector. And also because we will move to heat pumps with high efficiency. And also we'll see some insulation policies that will reduce the total need of energy consumption for it in those sector. We can also add to that there will be also a change in climate. So maybe the evolution of the need for it in this sector will be reduced because of that. So here we only focus on the evolution of the electricity consumption, the total electricity consumption. And we can see that in our toward net zero scenario, so in our ambitious scenarios that include the sufficiency and high efficiency technology, there will be an increase of 50% of the electricity consumption between 2025 and 2040. In fact, it can be explained as it is between these 2 years that we see the replacement of the majority of the fossil fuel technologies that we use today. For example, in transport, it's between 2025 and 2040 that the car will move from fossil fuel, from gasoline, petrol to electric, but also in buildings and also in industry. So there will be a huge increase between these two years. So this increase is kind of a major issue for the power system and impose for the country to develop large capacity of production of electricity, of course, with zero emission capacity. Just last point on this chart, which is, I think, important, is the chart for our toward net zero scenario. So in that chart, we included strong efficiency and sufficiency behavior. If we have looked to our objective delayed scenario, maybe the rapidity of the increase will be a bit delayed in the future, but in fact, the total electricity consumed in 2050 is higher in the objective delayed scenario because we do not include strong efficiency and sufficiency policies in that scenario. So even if we delay the objective, we still need a lot of electricity. Okay, so that was about electricity. Now we'll focus on oil consumption. So oil consumption is mainly, in fact, in road transport. We can see that it represents 75% of the total energy oil consumption in final part of the energy system. Those last year, we saw a decline of the energy consumption in building and in industry sector, but not in the road transport sector, which remained quite constant during this 2010 and today. Of course, this will be the next step of the evolution of the oil consumption in European country will be the evolution of the stock of vehicle and especially the stock of car. So first, we'll see a shift to electric in the passenger road transportation, and after later in the good transportation. You can see a bit later. We also displayed here the evolution of the energy, the oil consumption in the objective delayed scenario. So we can see that in 2035 it will be 50% higher than in the toward net zero scenario, and of course as it's really diminished in 2050, it could be 150% higher than it is in our toward net zero scenario. Another key point maybe to discuss is just to mention that in our toward net zero scenario in 2045, we will consume in road transport the total biofuel consumption that we have today. So in fact, in 2045, we can expect that all the consumption of oil will be based on biofuel for road transportation. Yeah, so here it was just to emphasize about just a bit on what is the impact of the objective of delayed, for example, the policy of end the sales of fossil cars by 5 years. So on the left of the slide, you have the evolution of the sale with the current target, so the end in 2035. And also the evolution with the target in 2040. On the right of the slide, you have the evolution of the stock of car, and you can see that there will be the major difference will be in 2040, where there will be a difference of 30 million of vehicle that will be fossil vehicle or non-electric vehicle between the objective delayed and toward net zero scenario. So that was to say that if we delay the objective, the difference would be the main difference in energy consumption will be between those years, so between 2030 and 2040, in fact. Another point that we wanted to discuss here is what could be the impact of sufficiency policies in the scenario. So here you can see that in objective delayed scenario, you have more cars than in the toward net zero scenario. Is because we included car sharing policies, reduction of number of car per person, etc., or public transport support also in the toward net zero scenario that we didn't include in objective delayed scenario. So we have a difference of 10% in the number of car in circulation in between the two scenarios in 2050. After electricity and oil, we wanted to show the evolution of the gas consumption. What could be the evolution of the gas consumption? As we said, today is in our scenario, so it's in our toward net zero scenario, so it's an ambitious scenario. And we have today the gas is mainly consumed in building, which represents 75% of the consumption. And we can see that there is no major evolution in the gas consumption, small decline, but not a major decrease. Due to the war in Ukraine and the impact on gas market, we expect a strong decrease in the future years, in the next future years by 2025 of the total gas consumption. But the major decrease will be first in buildings, as we have now heat pumps that could replace the gas boiler in this sector. Finally, in this scenario, as we include all the ban of a new boiler, gas boiler and oil boiler, we can see that there will be almost no gas consumption in buildings by 2050. But it will remain a bit of consumption in industry, mainly for high heat requirement. As for the oil, we also displayed the evolution of the gas consumption for the objective delayed scenario, which could be 40% higher in 2035 and 130% higher in 2050. In fact, there is a lot of debate of the place of the gas in the future energy system, as we could develop biogas to meet the need of gas. It's why here we assume in both scenarios that almost all the gas consumption in 2050 could be met by biogas in our two scenarios. So just to focus on how it will happen in buildings, we displayed here the evolution of the surface heated by standalone oil boilers and standalone gas boiler and heat pump in the future years. So you can see that concerning the standalone gas boiler, the area heated is declining between 2010 and 2020, but for the standalone gas boiler, it's increasing. As we said, we include in our scenario all the policies about ban, and we can see that it could decrease quite fast in both energy, as in 2050 almost no building could be heated by standalone oil boiler and gas boiler. We can see that there will be a shift in 2030 between 2030 and 2035 when heat pumps will heat more area than standalone oil boiler and gas boiler we did in this year. Maybe a last point to discuss is what would be the future. In fact, in this scenario, what would be the future of the distribution gas network, as the consumption of gas will decrease in cities. We can expect that there will be an issue to manage how the cities will maintain the gas network for the few last users of gas between 2040 and 2050. So yeah, that's all for all the results. Of course, here we presented the main result with a macro target or macro approach. In our scenario, we use really detailed assumption about, for example, share of cooking in buildings, different energy requirements in industry, etc. So maybe Florent will explain a bit more how we proceed.
Thank you, Paco. Yes, now a few words about our tools and solutions to go further with the energy demand perspective, and an illustration, a concrete illustration. The first thing you can have a look is the country energy demand forecast, CEDF. It's a user-friendly interface, ready to use, that will show you all the results that has been presented today by country, by sector, So here you can see also that you can display the intermediate results and the detailed drivers, for example, about the traffic assumptions and all the unit consumptions we have taken. Well, you can display then the two scenario objective delay and toward net zero. Of course, you have the historical data based on our database as presented Paco before. And then you can display also sensitivity analysis by playing with the button. So an interesting tools for those who want all the results of today, all the details. One point, yes, we model, of course, the COVID impact and the rebound of 2021. With the another product we have, well, it's the model. It's the Enermed model that is based on our experience with more than 60 countries in bottom-up modeling. So it's the last version of MEDE and MEDPRO models, and this model can be useful to produce net zero emission pathways and refine it with us. So usually the first step is to make a perimeter definition to develop the Enermed reference file. So it's a very tailored step. So we'll have a look, if you want, for example, a net zero emission scenario for 5 regions that will be aggregated with the time step of 1 year, and we give all the equations and hypotheses based for this scenario. Once we deliver the file, then usually the client, with our help, can move all the drivers regarding sufficiency, decarbonization. It can source other yields range if you want. We can also have assumptions about pace of technologies deployment in terms of sales and stock. All the results in indicators, final and useful energy or GHG emission, can be then used to produce net zero emission strategies, but also to produce downscaling. So produce regional scenarios based on a national scenario. That is something interesting in this moment. You can use it as impact analysis to assess what is the impact of an announcement. We'll have this look in the next slide, or to see if your investment portfolios are aligned with decarbonization pathways or objective delayed pathways regarding all the stock of technologies. These few words, yes, to say also that we have built for an illustration with the recent announcement during the UK campaign. So as you know, UK is one of the most ambitious country regarding the change, so the technological change needed for decarbonization. And the new announcement was to say we want to delay the objective. So we used the scenario we had previously done with UK to see what is the impact of pushing back the deadline of banning the oil and gas boiler in buildings, and also to have only 80% phase out by 2035 instead of 100%. So as you can see, the area here is the amount of CO2 that has been emitted, that could be emitted with this announcement, and it has been calculated as a 10% more cumulative emission over the 30 years period. We did the same for the cars because they had a better target than EU, so 2030, that has been moved by 5 years. So this has an impact on the stock of vehicles, and also in the area you can see all the CO2 that will be emitted if this announcement are putting in the next regulation. So this can lead to an additional cumulative emission of 15%. So just an illustration of what we can do with these tools. And that's it. So don't hesitate to ask us for demo or for all your questions. Thanks for your attention, and perhaps if we have questions in the Q&A. we can answer it right now.
Yeah, maybe we have a first question about how we included sufficiency in our model. So the question was, did you split industry sufficiency and people sufficiency in our model? Alors, so in fact, we include people sufficiency by change the behavior. So for example, the temperature for heat buildings, or temperature for AC also, but also car sharing, reduction of the number of kilometers in transport. And for industry is a bit more complicated, as it's quite difficult to estimate what could be the efficiency in industry. So in our scenario, we include some hypotheses on evolution of the activity of the industry that will remain constant, because it's hard to know if with the new plan of reindustrialization, it will increase or decrease. But we also include in industry some hypotheses on recycling for the material that could be considered as a sufficiency measure for industry. It's how we include it.
You answered two questions. Perhaps other people can be interesting.
Yes, there were a question about the evolution of the population, why it's declining in the future. We just use a Eurostat scenario. In fact, when we look at the evolution of the population in Europe, it's expected to decline by 2050, because the rate of natality is quite low currently in Europe.
And the scope is our 5 countries also.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is a question about the import of hydrogen. In fact, as we focus only on final energy demand, here we didn't manage to model the evolution of the export and import of hydrogen. For example, we just managed to estimate what could be the consumption of hydrogen in the future years.
That could be complementary work based on this figure. The climate change impacts.
So another question was about how did we include the change of climate and the impact of climate change on energy system. So that was included mainly through the demand of heat and cold for in buildings. We use the indicator of heating degree days and cooling degree days to estimate the evolution of the basic need for heat and for cooling in the building, so in the residential and in services. We do not include the climate effect in the other part of our energy system.
Question about electricity production and decarbonization.
Which one? No, yeah, we didn't talk about the evolution of the production of electricity. In fact, it's because our scenario and our tools here are really focused on the evolution of the demand. To explain a bit that, just that our team is in charge of estimate the evolution of the demand and to follow the progress of energy demand in the European country through the Odyssey database. So we develop also tools to forecast the evolution of the demand over the year. So we didn't focus on the electricity production. But as I said a bit, there will be a major challenge on that, because we can see that the future of energy in Europe will be mainly electricity. In fact, electricity will be the energy of the future in Europe, and so there is a strong issue about how we will produce enough electricity to meet our needs that we estimated in this presentation.
This can be linked with your previous question, with the question.
There's a question about how did we calculate GHG emission. Today, we only calculated the emission that are directly made on site, so scope 2, if we can use that. So only the emission related to the combustion of fossil fuel and also emission related to industrial processes that we modeled. But we didn't include in our figures the imported emission or emission related to electricity production, as it wasn't our focus today. But this kind of thing, we do it for other project or in other consultancy project. It's something that we usually do in our project. There is a question about the assumption for new construction rate and what a new construction rate of building, I assume. For that, we have an assumption of how many buildings will be destroyed according to the average age of the stock of building, and we estimate also the new need of building according to the evolution of the population and how the population will use this building. For example, how many people will be in one apartment or in one house. And it's how we estimate what would be the need for new construction, and it's how we calculate the rate of construction. There is a question between the link of this scenario and our near future scenario, which are more global and worldwide scenario. So here we wanted to focus only on Europe and on energy demand. The near future scenario is a more global scenario, but less detailed scenario, especially, of course, on the energy demand. So today we focus really on the evolution of the energy demand with a detailed approach. And how it is linked today, it was two different exercises that we did. We used two different models, but the goal of in Enerdata is maybe to get closer the two exercises and the two models, and maybe in the future update of the future scenario, we will include some result of this work.
This can be linked to the questions about the price also. That's right, the near future is based on carbon price and energy prices, so this is related to this question. What is useful energy used for in your model?
Sorry?
What's the question about useful energy? We mentioned the final energy and useful energy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question, because the calculation of the evolution of the energy demand is based on the evolution of the useful energy demand in the scenario. And so the question is about how we calculate the useful energy demand with historical data. In fact, we have some database about the efficiency of technology that we will use, and we use the final energy, and based on the final energy consumption, our data on stock of technologies and data about the efficiency of the technologies, we can come back to a useful energy demand. one project in our team is maybe to develop this approach about useful energy and to give to in our database some data about the evolution of useful energy in historical data, but also future evolution of the useful energy.
And if some of you have needs this useful energy result, it's something we can take from our models.
Okay. Other question?
Let's have a look. Calculate cost macroeconomic impact of each scenario. We have examples of project. The current project was with Tunisia, and we connected the 3D model with our output to calculate this macroeconomic impact. But it can be done with other macroeconomic models.
Yeah, there's a question about the if we take into account the evolution of CO2 factors for the primary energy. So, for example, for electricity and the share of biogas in that could impact the evolution of the emission factor in a gas network. Yeah, of course, we made some assumption on that based on other products that we have in Enerdata, so for example, in our future. And it's yeah, we use some assumption for that in this model. Do you want to?
Bottom versus top down. Perhaps we'll answer all the remaining questions because we are going at the end of the webinar. This question: are you confident with the ability of EU to reach carbon neutrality? That is political question. Richard Sunak postponing the deadline said. Sorry.
Rishi Sunak postponing the deadline said that the market will is on the good phase to do it by itself, so it didn't want to push constraints about citizens. So we can see in all the upcoming elections that it can be a discussions on how we have to deal with this with all these deadlines. So sorry, I don't have an answer. I have other questions. Thank you, everyone. We'll answer all the remaining questions writtenly, and then yes, don't hesitate to contact us if you have other questions further. If you want to share the content we have presented, so you have our contact. So please to have further discussions. Thanks a lot, Paco, and thanks to everyone for your attention.
Thank you.